Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's 7 a.m. here in Canada. Not so much for my friend on the other side of the world in UAE. But PL Stewart, 6L Month Interviews. I am so honored and humbled to have a dear friend. I haven't caught up with him in a while. I'm anxious to speak about all things Zamil AKHTAR, his writing, talk about his latest recent fantastic book, Dark Drinker, which I thoroughly enjoyed. This series, and we'll get into this, the Gunmetal God series. I put out a video about being disappointed about my top indie series, and one of the reasons disappointment is that I didn't count unfinished series yet. I know Zamil's getting close to being finished, so I'm not knocking him here. I'm just saying this is clearly going to wind up in my top 10 series, indie fantasy series of all time when it's finished. So, but we'll get to that. In any case, just wanted to welcome the wonderful Zamil AKHTAR. How you doing today, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing great. It's awesome to be here and to be catching up with you.
Yeah, no, that's how I feel, man. We haven't spoken in a long time. So, how have things been for you? How's the writing coming along?
Yeah, like always, it's busy. I've got so after Dark Drinker, I didn't want to just jump into the next big Gunmetal Gods book.
Yeah.
So we had the Kickstarter for Conqueror's Blood. And then right after that, I started working on a novella. So it will be the second novella in the Gunmetal Gods saga. Just to break things up and to write a sort of slightly different kind of story. The novella is going to be more horror focused. So yeah, I've got that going for me right now. It's been, to be honest, it's been a bit challenging because some of us are so used to writing big novels that when you shrink the story down, it's like, how do I do this now? What is the concept? How do I write it? It has to be like 30,000 words instead of 150,000. So yeah, that's been taking up my time, but as always, it's a lot of fun.
Well, that sounds awesome. Now, can you give us any hints about the novella? Because as you know, I absolutely adore the Gunmetal God series. It's one of my favorite series of all time. It is dark. The characters are ruthless and utterly gray. It just has so many fantastic aspects. When we talk about the novella, wow, Death Rider has to be one of my favorite indie science fiction. I've never put out a ranking specifically novellas, but that would probably be near the very top of the pile. Can you give us any hints about this novella that you're working on? It's set in the Gunmetal Gods world.
Yeah, so I want to explore like other time periods in the in the lore of Gunmetal Gods. So it is set around 500 years before the events of Gunmetal Gods, the first book, and it explores a different, basically an entirely different period where the world was completely in a state of collapse after a massive civil war. In the main area where the Gunmetal Gods takes place in the Seleucid kingdoms. And it's this massive civil war, and it's been going on for like 70 years. So like the original people who started it aren't even fighting it anymore. They're dead, and a new generation has picked it up. And they don't even know why they don't even really know why they're fighting this war. They just have to keep fighting it because that's the way the world is. So it's sort of an even more desperate and even darker setting than the main series. But I'm trying to focus more on like the horror element. So this is something I've been doing with every book in Gunmetal Gods, but with this novella, I want it to be even more horror focused. So yeah, that's it's been a lot of fun, but I'm a fantasy author primarily, and when I say to myself, okay, I want to make this book lean even more toward horror, it's a little bit challenging because it's almost like you're shifting genres a little bit.
Well, no, and I totally understand, but I have to say, Zamil, like I think your series is extremely popular, even beyond indie circles, and I think for a lot of your fans like myself, what I can't look away from. Like your series is brilliantly written. There's so many elements that I love, but it's actually that element that I don't read as much. It's that cosmic horror element that really, like, when I finish reading one of your books, the images in my head, that's what sticks with me, right? I think in all the fantasy series I've ever read, regardless if it's self-published or traditionally published, there's a scene in one of your books that I will never, ever, ever, ever be able to get out of my head. So essentially when, like, a clash of gods. I think you know what I'm talking about. It was just, yeah, that particular image is just, and you know what? Oh, I have to quickly interrupt because my wonderful, wonderful partner, Taylor from May Between the Pages, one of the best booktubers out there, who I'm eminently honored to share screen time with when we do page showing. Hey Taylor, what's up? She says, hey, it's two of my faves in the book world. Thank you so much.
Hi, Taylor.
Dear friend, how you doing? So nice of you to stop by early in the morning. I guess it's actually night for you out there in Japan. So, and as you know, check out Taylor's channel. She does some wonderful, wonderful content, especially her vlogs of Japan, which she's leaving soon. But check out her channel. You can find all about that as well. And Taylor says, considering Elder Epoch always gave me nightmares. If I'm ready, man, I tell you, yeah. So then that's what Taylor's speaking about. That's what I was mentioning, that the cosmic horror aspect is just, and I think, you write dark tales, but you also write about, this inner little teeny weeny, element of goodness within the characters that just saves them from being completely irredeemable, right? And but it's also really fascinating because, and I think for me, the characters, the way it's tied into the especially the cosmic horror element, the characters, I think they, in my opinion, and you correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of them seem to feel, to an extent, hey, I can control my destiny to a point, right? But then, of course, there's the gods. But then what they get carried away with, well, maybe I can control my destiny even more. And I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this. And then invariably they found out, oh, no, you're just a pawn, right? All your schemes and all your machinations, at the end of the day, you're just a pawn. And there's so many bigger things going behind the scenes that you have no idea. Is that something that you really relish, in terms of seeing, like, these mortals with all these schemes and all these plans and these political intrigue, and then, but at the end,
Yeah, I always think about our own world, when I come up with these characters who, at certain points in their lives, they feel like they're, as you say, that they're like completely in control of their own destiny, that they can forge their own path, that they can, whatever they want, they can make it a reality, even if it means imposing their own will upon the world. And some of these characters have so much power and they abuse that power. But then, when they come face to face with something even more powerful that is so beyond their scope of even being able to, like, they don't even try to fight with, these gods and these entities. They're resigned completely, and they kind of realize that, okay, there's nothing we can do. But they still continue on with their human conflicts. Yeah. So these human conflicts that they're having with other people are still going on while these gods are, present, and while they're doing what they want to do, and while they're actively using these people who are so caught up in their conflicts with other human beings for their own ends. So I find that, particularly satisfying to write about. Also because I'm from a part of the world where you have a lot of conflict, between human beings, and a lot of the time that conflict is going on in a context where there are a lot more powerful other, people, like in the United States and Russia and some of these more powerful countries, who are sort of meddling, like the gods do in gunmetal gods, and controlling different factions, and sort of making events go their own way. And that's kind of what inspired the gods in this in the series. That idea that, okay, there might be a local conflict in the Middle East, but it's a proxy war between like the
Yeah,
U.S. and the
yeah,
Soviet
yeah.
Union, right? So that idea is what inspired that, and I'm still fascinated by it.
You know what? That's so interesting, and I never realized that that was particularly inspiration for the cosmic horror element, and the being controlled by outside forces in a way that that your own conflicts that seem so huge and so dramatic are really just they're compared to the real conflicts going on behind the scenes are insignificant. And I mean, of course, you look at the state of the world. I mean, I feel sometimes there's no bigger internal conflicts than the ones going on within some of these larger countries that you're talking about with huge nuclear arsenals and things like that, whereby their conflicts are their it would seem their bigger conflicts are external, but really they're internal because of political strife and disunion within the actual countries. And you see this in your book whereby the gods war with each other unceasingly, right? And there's actually in some ways almost like a fight for the hearts and minds of these insignificant humans, that but the gods still need penitence, right? They still need their, if their penitents cease to believe in them, in a way they cease to exist, right? So it's I find that really fascinating. But I wanted to ask you, because since you've raised this topic, what is that a commentary at all about agency, and how do you feel like I've started to read some writers. I haven't finished the series. Another series I know is going to be amazing. R. Scott Bakker, his series with the second apocalypse, etc. And from what I can see from reading that series, part of his commentary is that basically we have no agency as human beings. That we're all being like. How do you feel about agency? And are you commenting on that specifically in your series?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I've thought about that a lot, because ultimately, if you have a cosmology where humans are so small and insignificant compared to higher forces, then it would seem at the end of the day like whatever we do, it's not going to matter at the end, right? Because we're just going to get swept up in this tide of the gods, basically, and whatever these gods want to do, and whatever we do, it's not even going to amount to a footnote. It's not going to have any effect at all, right? And that might be true. That might be true even in real life. We don't know. Like the scale of the universe is so vast that we're not even like a speck on a grain of sand. We're not even that large, in terms of the scale of the universe. We're just so small, right? But when you zoom in, and you zoom in completely on our lives, and the human, the human context, on that level, what we do, of course it does matter. And I try to express this in the books as well, because I don't think, like, compared to R. Scott Bakker, I don't think I'm as hopeless, in the sense that, you know, everything is a matter of perspective, right? And for all we know, we're the only perspective that exists that we know of, right? So we can't completely deny that our actions have meaning, because in that perspective they do have meaning. If I treat if I treat you well, if I treat my neighbors well, if I treat my family well, that does matter. If I'm a king and I rule with justice and I rule as best as I can, that does matter in that context, right? So in Gunmetal Gods, I still try to keep that alive. There that the characters, I still want them to be sympathetic. I want the readers to see that, yes, they do awful things, they do terrible things, but at the end of the day, a lot of them are still trying their best, and they're caught up a lot of the time in a human drama that, like let's say Game of Thrones or some other book that focuses on human drama, that is still relevant, and the human drama still matters.
Yeah, no, I agree. And what I see with your characters, my opinion of many of your characters, is that I kind of parse them into three categories. There's the characters that are simply in essence just trying to survive. They're in a situation whereby, especially in a lot of the more royal and ruling housing settings, they're just trying to survive and perhaps carve out a bit of success, what they consider success in within their little niche for themselves. And then there's the characters that are the second characters. The characters are the active political players. Like they're scheming, jockeying for a reason. They want more power. They want a bigger title. They want an army behind them. They want something. And the motivations for them wanting that something may be because they feel that, they want, they believe in a particular God and they're ready to start a holy war in the name of this God, etc. But they are the ones that are actively and then we have the characters that, they're kind of, in my opinion, they have their own agenda that has nothing to do with anything other than that specific agenda. And that agenda may or may not have something to do with their own advancement, but they're quite willing to die for whatever their cause is. And it's not about their survival and their enrichment and, wearing, more expensive clothing and having a bigger palace. They have this specific agenda, which they're totally committed. Right. And so I find that last category of characters, those are the ones that because clearly when you're willing to sacrifice everything, yourself, your family, your soul, those who follow you, everything else for this cause, those are the characters obviously that are, to me, are the most dangerous. Right. Yes. Because you cannot deter them from their goals. They're single-minded and they're willing to do anything. And those characters are the ones that I find, and all your characters are fascinating, but I'm always watching to see what they're doing and what they're willing to do to accomplish their goals.
Those characters fascinate me, and they're also the easiest characters to write. So, they're single-minded. They want something so badly. So as a writer, I always know what they're going to do. And that gives me, a lot of clarity because, when characters are not so motivated, when they're not so, when they're ambivalent, I guess, it's, they might just spend a day at the beach instead of going after what they want. Right. And like you said, those characters are the most dangerous because and this is the point, this is often the point of a lot of the character arcs in the series, where I as a writer ask these characters, what are you willing to sacrifice to get this? And I want to challenge them with, going from the lowest thing to the highest thing. And I want the reader to see every step of the drama internally and, externally when they decide whether or not to sacrifice this thing for their greater goal. And that's how you really find out who these characters are. And, sometimes, the character is not willing to sacrifice something. And you find that out, and it can be a surprise. Like in book one, I don't, maybe I'll try to be vague so I don't spoil. But in book one, Micah reaches a point where he's like, no, I'm not going forward. This is too much for me, right? And because he made that decision, he had there were certain ramifications that took him in a completely different direction, as you see in the latest book, right? So it's important that we I as a writer challenge these characters and find out who they are. And I think one of the themes is that who wins in the end is the person who is willing to give up absolutely everything, right?
Yeah, and I do want to get to speak specifically about Dark Drinker as well too, and it's amazing you touched that topic. When it comes to Dark Drinker, you have mainly two POV perspectives. You have two point of views, and both, one, I think, and I'm trying not to spoil here, a fantastic character who we've seen before that, finds himself, back in the game where he thought he wasn't going to be, for quite serious reasons, but finds causes that he believes now are worth fighting for again. Very different from what he was fighting for before, but now more fighting for people, for specific people that he cares about. And then you have another character, Vasco, who I found fascinating. And I found it fascinating you chose to use him specifically as the POV out of all the characters. Who is more on that other side, I feel, of the ambition and wanting certain things. So just quickly, why did you, and I'm trying not to spoil it, it's very, because Dark Drinker, it's hard to talk about the plot without spoiling specific things for the previous books, but why did you choose to write the book from the point of view of that first character, and also Vasco for Dark Drinker in specifically?
Yeah, that is an excellent question, because I know that it has surprised a lot of readers, and a lot of readers went into this book thinking, okay, we know where Kiva was and where Syra was at the end of book 3. Now this is just going to continue that, right?
Yeah.
No, it turns out it's not. And kind of like with Conqueror's Blood, which introduced completely new points of view, the fourth book is also a bit of a curveball, right? In that its POVs are unexpected. And why I decided to do that is I sat down to write this book, and I realized that I couldn't just continue the story that is going on, right after Elder Epoch, without exploring exactly what happened in this part of the history. And that meant, okay, we have to go back 1 year, and we have to shift points of view. We have to shift the whole country. We have to shift to another country, right? And we have to show the readers what happened here, because this is so important to what's going to happen next, after the events of Elder Epoch. And it's so important because when you read Elder Epoch, there's a lot of hints toward, okay, this character, why are they talking about him? He's not been around since book 1. Why do they keep mentioning him? Why is he like so important in the very last chapter? And the best way to show this was to go back and tell this story, and to tell it as well as I could, as dramatically as I could, and to introduce this new character, Vasco, who, will obviously be important in the series going forward. And it's, to do these kind of things, it's exciting for me, because sometimes I, as an author, don't even expect it. I, as an author, wasn't expecting to write this book in this way. But I realized after a lot of false starts that I had to, because I can't tell the story if I don't.
And that was, and that is where, it's not all about comparators. I know we, especially in book 2, love to make these comparisons. If you like this series, this book, read this. If you like this author, read this. In the indie fantasy sphere, and I always preface this by saying, indie books, how much I love them. I love books published regardless of the venue, traditionally published books, etc. We're all authors. We're all the same. However, I think the indie sphere gets to do. We get, to be honest with you, we have a lot of fun. I think we have more fun because we get to do certain things that perhaps aren't allowed in the traditionally published world. But again, in terms of comparators, that what you just mentioned is one of the reasons why, if I was looking for some of the comparators out there in the traditionally published world to Gun of Metal Gods, now that I'm in the middle of reading Malazan Book of the Fallen by Stephen Erickson, there's a lot of elements I'm starting to see now from your writing, the way you do things, to Malazan, because in Malazan, again, you have these books where you have characters that you read in a whole book, and like, oh my gosh, okay, and you figure the book is going to be a continuation of those characters, but nope, you may go to a totally different continent, a whole new set of characters, and then you're thinking, okay, and at first it's kind of like you get a bit of whiplash, like, wait a minute, like what? And then you realize how integral it is to the story and how it's all woven and linked, and that's also genius. And I'm really truly beginning to admire your genius, Zamil, in your ability to do that, to take a whole fresh new set of characters, and you think the story is this, you get a new set of characters in the book that follows, and you're like, wait a minute, but then you start to fall in love with those characters and care about what happens to them, and then you start to see how it's linked to the overall story. And again, that's a high level of craft, right? So I'm really starting to appreciate that. Now, I know you've read a lot of fantasy yourself of all different types. Is that the kind of story you also like to read? Now, I know you said you had fun and you loved doing it as a writer. Is that also the kind of story you like to read?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Because I like a lot of fantasy readers. I like epic scope. I like this. I like when the scope is like, okay, there are eons of history. There are, across this massive world, and there are so many characters who are part of this epic drama. Now, at the same time, what I don't like as a reader is, and this is just my own pet peeve, is bouncing around in one book through like 50 characters.
Yeah.
And it's just, and that's just my personal pet peeve. So when I set out to write Gunmetal Gods, I wanted to limit the POVs, just because I find it like frustrating when there's like 20 POVs and I'm like, I don't even remember what this guy did, like what he was doing, and I don't even care about this guy, and then I have to read about this guy, and so it's like I wanted to do that epic scale, but in a different way, with like focused points of view. And that's also a challenge, and I know a lot of readers are not going to like that. Every reader has their own pet peeves and what they like, and some readers have said, like, oh, for example, I don't like how you bounce around first person point of view with different POVs, right? So every reader is different. But this is what I wanted. This is kind of the story, the way I wanted to do it, and kind of the story that I like to read. So that's why it is that way, and that's why you won't see like a POV character won't be around for like 2 books and then they'll pop back in, right? And it for me, it's just cool, that in fantasy, and this is probably unique to fantasy, that you can do this. You can write these stories that are going across continents and have this big epic plot that you can just introduce whole new casts of characters. And I love it, and it's good that fantasy readers also like that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. And Taylor mentions, I love when books do that. I enjoy trying to slot the new timeline with what I already know. So Taylor's obviously a fan of that. I personally, and I love what you do, because I'm one of the few, I think, authors and readers out there. Not the few. I mean, my circle of friends, I prefer first person POVs. I always have. I love limited perspectives. There's certain things that I don't want to know until the character knows. I want to follow that journey along with the character as they discover, rather than always being provided with the information omnipotently, because you have the POVs of everybody else who knows that information as well. And I think there's a few exceptions out there. I mean, A Song of Ice and Fire, obviously one of my favorite authors, George R. Martin favorite series. But again, even as you raised the excellent point, even me, like, there's certain POVs as I read the series I wasn't as interested in, and I always wanted to get back to this particular POV with my favorite characters, right? And I also found that in Malazan, and the last book I read by Malazan, The Bone Hunters, was fantastic, but literally mid-chapter, you kept bouncing back and forth to different POVs, and some of the POVs weren't necessarily ones that, and again, this is my personal critique, this is not taken away from the mastery of Steven Erikson at all, this is just my personal reading preference, in that, I was like, oh, but I want to know what's going on with so and so, right? And I'm not a skimmer, I'm not a skipper. I read straight through. I'm one of those obsessive people that I can't skim a book. I have to read pretty well every single word. But yeah, I found myself like, oh my gosh, like when am I gonna go back to but what I think so much of your skill, you're great at so many things as an author, but you're able to make these first person POVs feel very distinct and unique. And that is definitely a skill. And, I think you should be commended for that in the way that you're in the head of someone totally different when you flip chapters and one chapter is this character and then the next chapter is this character. And I think that really adds a richness and an immersion to reading your books, because I'm the kind of reader, I want to know what's in that character's head, especially because your characters have all these very convoluted motivations and complicated, reasons for doing things sometimes, right? And you depict it so well in that, okay, now I really understand why this person did that and why this person did, and because you're in their head and you're flushing out all their inner thoughts and their feelings and their emotions, and when they're doing stuff, especially when they do horrible things, right? Because you it's that juncture, that moment I always look for in your characters when they're about to do something really bad, and typically you're excellent at foreshadowing that they're going to do something really bad here. I don't quite know what it is, but they're going to do something bad to achieve this particular end, right? And you see it coming, and you're like, okay, I see the way they're thinking. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? What are they capable of? And then when they do it, you're always still shocked because you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did that. But it was consistent with how you foreshadowed it, built it up, and because we're privy to their inner monologues, and we see the things they've done in the past, and we know sometimes it's an escalation. And in a lot of cases, the characters know, this is horrible. I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm committed, so go forth, right?
No, man. The thing that I love is to get into the voice of a character. So this is a word that I think authors don't throw around enough or don't think about enough. Voice, right? Because I think in fantasy, and I enjoy a lot of the third person writing, but a lot of it is written this voiceless way, where it's like, as you say, you're being told the events, and it's not, it's not like immersed in the perspective of the point of the character. It's like you're being narrated the events, and it's sort of like you're watching a movie, right? Instead of reading someone telling you a story. So that's when the very first thing I do when I sit down to write, whether it's a short story or a book or anything, is I have to write the first like few lines in a very voicey way.
Yeah.
So it has to be supercharged, like it has to be written in this unique tone that only this character could speak in, right? And that's how I find, that's like the first germination of the character, and that's how I begin to find the character, and to really, everything follows motivation, what their likes and dislikes, everything follows that makes them fully fleshed out. But it all starts with the voice, and that I feel can only be done in first person. And that's also why, like you, I love reading first person. And a lot of again, this is all so particular to the reader, because some readers will say, I hate first person, I will not read first person, whereas others love it. It's like, if you like, when you're reading, if you like that voice to come across in the text, you're first person is the perspective for you, right? But if you like it to be like a movie camera and you're just watching a movie in your head, then you might prefer third person, right? And for me, I've tried writing third person, and it's so difficult for me because I don't have that voice. It's like I'm thinking of this movie, but I can't, and I'm just writing it, but it's not like flowing the way it does for me when I write first person, because that voice takes it away from me, and it just, the words pour out of it, and that character becomes real in my head. So that, like when you say, when I'm switching perspectives, it's like I'm just switching people in my head, and there's no difficulty in terms of what to write. They're just writing what they want to say. So like if they want to describe this castle to you, they'll describe it. If they don't want to describe it, they won't. If they want to describe in super detail like what a certain person looks like, they'll do it. If they don't care about that person, they won't describe them. Right? So it's like there's no dilemma in my head. What should I write here? It's just whatever this character who is real to me wants to write. That's what I'm going to write.
It's so amazing you say that, because I feel exactly the same. And I've written in predominantly first person, but then sometimes I zoom out and I give you, an omnipotent like third person, just to give you this little tidbit of information that, I feel I can't write as well from the first person. Like there are those times where that third person or omnipotent perspective helps you. It's more plot based, but for characters, and because I'm a very character driven writer and reader, I'm writing about the characters. This is this character's journey. They're telling you how they feel. They may look at this person and think described as being ugly. The person could be gorgeous, but in their mind they're ugly. And I want you to have that unreliable, so that later on when somebody else says something and the character's like, oh well, I guess maybe they're kind of okay looking. Like then you realize that you can't trust, because that's how we all are. And that's how I think. For me, and what I love what you're writing is, I feel like we as individuals only experience the world from our unique, flawed, messed up individual perspective. And I feel it's these varying, flawed, individual, messed up perspectives that make the world amazing, because we all see the world from a different lens, the lens of our upbringing, our culture, our language, our everything. And I think that's what makes stories so incredible. I think the unique perspectives from which these stories are told, and when you go back to, again, I know you'll know this, again, one of, I think, mutual favorite authors, when George R. R. Martin talks about a villain being a hero from the other side, you do that. It is so incredible, Zamil, how you do that you, because you're so good at giving us these different first person perspectives, you actually get to see this character's thoughts about, well, this is why I'm doing this. And this is why I'm so-and-so's enemy. And I'm their enemy because, and then you flip and you give their enemy's perspective. Well, this is why I'm so-and-so's enemy. And this is why, and that I think is just, again, I think that takes rare skill. And it makes sense that you write the characters. The first thing you said you do when you start writing is writing it from that voice, right? And that's why I think your work, one of the reasons your work is so phenomenal, and why I can't get enough of reading it. So quickly, I'll put up from Taylor. Oh, Taylor says, the creeping dread of knowing some shit is about to happen is such a vibe in the series, especially in Conqueror's Blood for me. Yes, I completely agree, Taylor. And I think, again, because Zamil does such an exceptional job with making you understand characters' motivations, they start off, when they do that one dastardly thing, and then they escalate to that next dastardly thing, you realize, wow, okay, well, like Zamil said, how far are they going to go? They may have, and as Zamil said, they may have their own line in the sand. Most human beings do. I'm willing to do this, but not that, right? And it may seem odd or hypocritical to us, or we may evaluate, go, well, no, I would have done that, but not this. But the whole point is they're individuals, and we all have our unique moralities and our codes and our unique forms of integrity. And what I love that Zamil does is seeing that integrity being stretched to the utmost limits. Whatever your box is, whatever your code is, are you willing to stretch, like step a bit outside of it? And then, oh, if I only did this one thing more, then I'll get to the goal. Oh, I didn't get there. Oh, well, maybe I just need to do this other thing. And that's that vibe that Taylor's talking about, is like something's gonna go down. Like this character is now gonna go beyond what they're gonna push beyond their own boundaries, and it usually ends up being like spectacular. So
yeah, like as you were saying, a lot of the, when it comes to perspective and a character being so sure of their worldview and viewing the world a certain way, that these are the bad guys, these are the good guys. I'm obviously one of the good guys, of course. That's what all the characters think, right? And then you switch perspective and it's like completely flipped. right? For me, this is so satisfying to write about, and this is probably something I could write for the rest of my life, because, like, okay, I'm a Middle Eastern American, and when I'm in America, I get a certain narrative, right? These are the good guys, these are the bad guys. Then I come over here and I talk to certain people, and the narrative is flipped completely 180 degrees. These are the good guys, and these are the bad guys. And everyone has their own justifications. Everyone is so 100% sure. Everyone is 1,000% sure that they're the good guy, that they're the one who is the victim, and that they're the one whom the injustice is being done to. And the other side is evil, and the other side has evil intentions, and the other side has this nefarious plot to, like, do all this evil stuff. And this is the thing that I've just, I've seen it so much, and it's, to me, it's amazing, and that's why I write about it, because we're all so capable of sort of this self-delusion whereby we are, and this is one of the most dangerous things, I think, is a hero or is a villain who thinks that he's the hero. This is the state of every character in the book, that they are the villain who thinks they're the hero, and they think that their agenda, because it's ultimately righteous and ultimately good, they can do certain things to achieve that agenda. And even if those things are, morally wrong, morally questionable, and even if those things harm other people, because their overall goal is a good one, is a righteous one, it's good. They're good, and what they're doing is good. And the most satisfying parts for me when I'm writing is when these characters suddenly they get a glimpse that, okay, maybe this is not the case. Maybe I'm not the good guy. Maybe I'm the bad guy, right? They get this glimpse, and it's sort of because, in interacting with other characters and their, because of the things that happen in the story, suddenly they're able to see things flipped from the other side, and they get this glimpse, and they're like, oh my God, wait a minute. Is this other guy exactly like me? Is my enemy just me, but flipped around? And it's that, that's why I sort of write Gunmetal Gods at the end of the day, is I want readers to have this capacity to see things from the other side, and to imagine that maybe their side is, depending on perspective, their side could be the villain and the other side the hero.
Yeah, and I absolutely love that. I love that. It's only when the characters come in close contact with their enemy, and it's holding up a mirror to them of, wait a minute, this person is just as, in some cases, as fanatical. This person is just as devoted to their cause. This person feels the way about me that I feel about them. And, when you start, and then, especially when it comes to the aspect of religion, because, the pantheon of gods that you've created is incredible. And when the characters start going, wait a minute, well, I worship this god, and if you don't believe, first of all, if you don't believe in this god the way I believe about them, even if you worship them, you're heretic, right? And so you have to worship them the way I worship them, to be devout. But then on top of that, if you worship this other god, well, that's total heresy. That that God has no power. My God is the only true God or goddesses, etc. And then that other person brings up points about why your God or goddess isn't, and then you may obstinately stick to your point of view, but then you start, oh well, maybe they had a point about that one. Oh, maybe they had a point about that one. And I love that that when these characters come into close contact, as you said, and they start to see some of the relevance in the other character's point of view, and not grudgingly not want to admit it, but also feel really guilty because, when they acknowledge these points of view, they also acknowledge that, wait a minute, I've just killed 1,000 people in the name of my God. Maybe that wasn't such a good idea. Like that, I love seeing that, and I love seeing that the characters, they don't just, and you make it so realistically, they don't just change a lifetime of indoctrination into a viewpoint. They don't change their lifetime of their upbringing. They don't change a lifetime of battling the enemy and feeling that they're the enemy, and suddenly they're suddenly friends and they sit down and have coffee. But they make those little tiny adjustments in their thinking and
Yes.
questioning, oh, you know what? Maybe I was wrong there. Maybe, and it often drives them absolutely in berserk. Like, oh my gosh, is everything that I believed is that? But typically, though, they still have enough resolve, and because of that upbringing, because of that indoctrination, they still go forward. They still go forward with what they're doing. But now they're feeling a bit differently about what they're doing, and that also affects the guilt aspect and the aspect of it helps them perhaps make better decisions sometimes in terms of what they're doing because they realize, and I just absolutely love that. I just want to quickly put a shout out that the wonderful Charlie Cabbage. Hey, Charlie, what's up? Thanks for coming by. So, hey, guys, was caught on this one. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well too, my friend. So, but yeah, I want to specifically dial into Dark Drinker a bit, and again, this is a hard book to speak about without spoiling the plot, but I feel like in Dark Drinker, you gave a certain character. I don't want to say it's a redemption arc, but you gave him an arc whereby they get a second chance to go back, examine their actions, interact with some people that perhaps they felt that, you know what, either this person wronged me, I wronged them, or this side was on the wrong side, I was on this side, and really get to re-examine themselves, right? Now, a lot of characters in your series won't get this unique chance, right? But was it satisfying for you to go back and provide the character with that almost that second opportunity?
Yes, this was super satisfying because, as we know, this character was the most fanatical, was the most rigid, was the most committed to his particular god, his particular, cause, and to the point where we all know what he did in book one, where, literally genocide, basically, right? So going back into this character's head, and after he's learned the truth about the gods, after he's learned, certain things that have sort of invalidated everything that he fought for and everything he believed, how do you move forward? And especially when you have so much blood on your hands, and now you realize I did this for no reason and it amounted to nothing, and nothing good came of what I did. All I did was just kill people for nothing, basically. How do you move on? How do you go on with your life? Do you just give up? Or do you find another thing to fight for that maybe can redeem you in a small way? Because you can't really be redeemed for wiping out like an entire city of people. There's no real redemption for that, if we're being honest, right? There's no way you can get the forgiveness of every person you hurt. And there's no way you can compensate for the destruction that you did in very real terms, right? But maybe in some small way, you as a human being can redeem yourself. At least you can show yourself that, okay, now I'm on a different path, and now I'm fighting for something else, and maybe that thing is good. Maybe I can protect people. Maybe I can help people instead of harm them. Maybe I can do something good for once, for a change. And so this character, he kind of latches on to the first good thing that he feels he can do, sort of because he does have this overwhelming guilt for what he did that he can't ever really process it. He can't ever really sit there and just think about it and come to terms with it, because it's too much. Like human egos and human brains are not strong enough to really accept that, which is why most people would never admit it in the first place. He at least does admit to some degree. He still kind of holds on to some ideas that, okay, I had to do this. To some degree, I was protecting certain people who would have been hurt if I hadn't done this. But yeah, obviously he kind of understands that what he did was horrendous. So it's very complicated. It's very messy, and it sort of shows that once you do something so irredeemable, at the end of the day, there's no real way to. There's nothing you can do basically. But as a human being, maybe you can do something small, right? At best, to sort of make up for it. Because what else can you do? Even the most horrendous people are still human beings, right? And it's just it's it's writing about that is very difficult, but it's also very satisfying because it's just typically it's typically not something a lot of us, maybe in a small way in our own lives we do something horrible and we try to redeem ourselves. But I think the scale that this of this character and what he did is just something that is, enormous. So it was challenging and fun to write about as well.
No, and that's I totally agree. That is amazing. And you bring up some exceptional points in that, first of all, most people in that position would never acknowledge that what they did was horrible, right? And it just brings to mind so many questions about when you see, especially characters throughout history, horrible, irredeemable characters throughout history, Hitler. You name your historical figure that committed atrocities on a scale that for most of us it's almost unimaginable. If that person suddenly repented, saw their ways, repented, what then? Right? What about the after? What about the after for them? What about the after for everyone else? How they look at that character, and it also raises the issue: is there such a thing for me? When I read your books, what I always think about for all of your characters: is there such a thing as genuine redemption? Is there such a thing as genuine penitence? Is there such a thing as genuinely feeling sorry and regretting and wanting to make atonement for the things that one has done? But even after that's done, does it really matter? Because in the most cases, your enemies care nothing for that, right? Your enemies care nothing for your genuine atonement and regret. Because first of all, like you said, you've crossed that line where too much has been done, right? For your enemies to care, to want anything other than your death or dismemberment, the destruction of your whole family. They want vengeance. They want to see vengeance upon you, your house, anyone close to you. They want to erase your name from memory, but at the same time, is there such a thing as genuine redemption? And that's when I read your books, that's a question that always sticks to my mind. I want to quickly put up what Taylor said, and this is something that's always challenged me in the series, that kind of like a character, despite the atrocities they commit. And yeah, I think that's probably the whole point of the series. Besides Kin, of course, yes, Kin is perfect. Of course, Kin is perfect. Taylor, but yeah, and I find myself, Zamil. This is another part of the genius. If you're writing, I start questioning myself. Because I write flawed characters. I love reading and writing flawed characters, and I find that the older I get, part of it is, I think, part of my my work life, what I've done in my work life. Part of it is just I have this almost compulsive thing about watching and reading characters who are flawed, to see just how flawed they are. Can they, like I said, can they redeem themselves? To what degree? Can they change? If those are that's really compelling for me. That's what I love about it. But what I find reading your books, I ask myself, how can I love this character so much when they're so horrible? Like, how come I cannot? All I care about is the survival and them coming out of this okay when they're so horrible, right? And that is a skill, to make a reader so attached to a character that has done these absolutely horrific things. And that's where I found myself again in Dark Drinker, like this terrible, irredeemable character. It's like, please, they got another chance. And then you know what I mean. Like, and that again, that's a skill. And I guess my question is for you as an author: when you get to that point, and you like I and I think a lot of authors out there, we put our characters through a lot of pain, and when we decide to take them off the board, what do you in general base those decisions on? I know for me, I don't feel it's necessarily a plot contrivance. Sometimes it is with minor characters that they have to pay the price, but I think with the major characters, and there's a saying: you never give your readers, what they want. You give the characters the fate that they deserve, right? Sometimes that may seem arbitrary, because not all the characters that are wonderful with promise are gonna go on to rule the kingdom and live happy ever after. Sometimes because of life, and I love the way George R. R. Martin does this. It's your actions, generally speaking, that cause your demise, not whether you're good, bad, or indifferent, right? So, how do you decide when you take characters off the board? Even if it's a beloved character, your readers will be like, "Oh my gosh!" What's your decision making behind that?
It's just as you said. It's very similar to George R. R. Martin's philosophy, and that is that, okay, look, these characters are playing a game at the end of the day, and the game has rules, and the game doesn't care about if you're moral or if you're not moral, if you're have convictions, and if you care about people, and if you're a good person in general. The game doesn't care. The game is just the game. You win it or you lose it, and generally speaking, if you lose at this game, you will die.
Yeah.
Now, this is not always the case, but in general, this has been the fate of a lot of characters. Some characters might get lucky. Some characters, they might get a second chance in the game. But in general, if you lose the game, you will die. And not just you. A lot of the times, your family will die as well. People you care about will die. So you have a very strong incentive to win this game, okay? Because yes, you might be a little bit selfless, and you might say, okay, I don't mind if I die. But what about your family? What about your wife and your kids and your people you care about? What about them? Obviously, you care about them. And so this also motivates characters sometimes to do things to hurt people on the other side that they normally wouldn't want to hurt, because they feel like they have to win this game. There's too much at stake. People I care about are going to die. Maybe entire groups are going to be wiped out if I lose.
Yeah.
So I have to win this game, even if no matter what I have to do, I have to win this game. And if I be merciful and that causes me to lose, is it right that I caused all these people to die on my own side because I was merciful to the enemy? Is that justice? Is that actually righteousness? Is that actually goodness? So I wanted to pose some of these moral quandaries because they're very applicable to our world. They're very applicable to real life, to a lot of the things which we have black and white judgments about, that, oh, this is obviously wrong and this is obviously right. But Micah says this very well in Dark Drinker, where he says, okay, if I hadn't done this, then guess what would have happened? If I hadn't gone and killed all these people, guess what would have happened? They would have come and they would have started killing us, and more of us would have died.
Yeah.
So I had to do it, right? This is how a lot of people think in our world as well. Okay, I have to do this, otherwise they're gonna come and kill us. So and human beings are stuck in this cycle of violence. Obviously, when you think this way and you do these kind of things, and the other side is thinking the same thing, and then they have to also attack you, and then you have to attack them again, and then you get this cycle of violence going, which takes on a life of its own. And that's how you get forever wars, and that's how you get, like in the book I'm writing right now, you got a 70-year, 100-year long war, because it's just the violence is taken on a life of its own, and everyone feels like they have to eliminate the other side to save innocent people on their own side. So this concept and this idea has driven a lot of motivates a lot of the characters in terms of what they do, in terms of how far they're willing to go. And I think it's something people people in general should think about a little bit more, instead of just seeing things in just stark black and white terms.
Yeah, no, that's an exceptional point. I think we see the polarization within nations, within groups of people, of course, between countries, these ideological differences, differences of political parties. It is very much, as you highlight, an inability to sometimes see the things from the other perspective and to consider the consequences of these rifts. And like you said, that could turn into escalated to huge conflicts of a global scale potentially. And I think one thing I always, growing up, you always, my age, I'm 55, the generation before me was always worried about World War III. It was always worried about the next big conflict. And because, of course, of the introduction of nuclear weapons into the landscape of armaments for warfare, that if there was a World War III, well, that might be it. That might be the end of all of us, right? That we would wipe each other out. But realizing that, and I always think about this when I read your book specifically, that a tiny little conflict, an interpersonal conflict, just between two people, can escalate into a global conflict. And I think that's something that, we forget as human beings, that, especially when the conflict takes place between powerful people and people with followers and people who will listen to those people, that little tiny, some little tiny conflict on the edge of the planet could turn into a global escalation. Like you said, you talked about proxy wars, like these things are not just, as horrific as a loss of life might be contained in a small area. We have no idea what it could turn into when more powerful players get involved. And that's always, I think the generation before me, especially like my mother's generation, that was always their fear, right? Post World War II, that, any of these conflicts, be it Korea, Vietnam, etc., and they happen in the Middle East, any of these conflicts worldwide could have turned into the final conflict, right? And I think that's a really important lesson. But I guess the difference is in your books that I always think about, the add things that, but we also don't realize what the gods are planning behind the scenes. And we also don't realize that, our human mortal conflicts still at the end of the day may come to naught because you have these powerful gods, manipulating and steering, and but again, so many reasons why I love your series, Zamil, and those are just some of the incredible reasons why I do. I want to touch upon a few things. You did mention at the onset of the chat that you were working on that you had the Kickstarter for A Conqueror's Blood. Now, I don't even have words for how grateful and appreciative I am that you sent me this absolutely spectacular special edition of Gunmetal Gods. That it's glorious. I mean, it's glorious. I looked at this for hours. I mean, like, it's just the artwork, the edges, this is just, I mean, this is just a beautiful edition. Congratulations on this. This is spectacular. So you mentioned the Kickstarter. Was that specifically for a special edition for Conqueror's Blood? Is that what you were referring to?
Yes, that's correct. So we're going to try to do every book in the series. So Conqueror's Blood just got done in December.
Wow. Congratulations, man. That is amazing. These are absolutely stunning. Folks, I mean, if you want something beautiful for your shelves, I know Taylor out there, she's still there. I mean, she's a huge specialist that, like, I will treasure this forever, Zamil. Thank you so much. One of my favorite authors and one of my favorite series. This is gonna have a spot of prominence for my lifetime on my shelves. This means so much. How is it, like? How does it make you feel that you've achieved this level of acclaim and popularity, sales, etc., and now you're seeing your books being made into these stunning visual pieces of art that, like, how does it make you feel, man?
I wonder that as well. How does it make me feel? Because it happens across such a lot. It happens like it takes such a long time to make, to make these special edition books and to put these Kickstarters together that, you there I think the moment when you launch the Kickstarter and when it funds and when you see people, pledging to it and gets to a good funding total, that's really when you start to feel like it's a little bit surreal. Like, wow, people really want like a beautiful special edition of Gunmetal Gods on their shelves, and they really want, these beautiful illustrations of some of the scenes in the book and some of the really crazy scenes that happen, and being able to take the story and to bring it closer to, like, you know in a way, getting all these illustrations made, getting the special edition made, it kind of makes it more real, because you're getting, you're infusing the story into the design, and obviously the illustrations, but everything is just so infused with elements from the story. And it's like, wow, Gunmetal Gods kind of became more real in that sense, and it became, and obviously in the sense that it's achieved this level of success, as an indie book. It's very satisfying, and it's still something which I still, when I sit down to write, I still feel the same, so it's weird in that way. It's like there's a lot of people who want to read these books, who are waiting to read these books, but when I sit down to write, I'm still just a guy trying to tell a story, that is gonna satisfy me, and that is gonna play with all these ideas that we talked about, so nothing has changed in that regard. So for the most part, nothing has changed, like every time we sit down to talk, I still feel the same, and I still mainly want to talk about the ideas, and I still want to, write a book that is filled with these ideas and filled with, uh, does all these beautiful, beautiful things that storytellers like us like to do. So in that sense, nothing has changed, but it's an amazing feeling, when I sit down to think about it, that yeah, I get to make these special editions. I get to keep writing this series. It's amazing, it's living the dream.
Yeah, and we're so happy for you, Zamil. We're so happy for your success. Taylor says her edition, her Gunmetal God special edition, is in the States, and Dine touched it. Well, you're gonna get to do that soon, Taylor. I know, because you're relocating. So I'm happy for you that you're gonna get to, kind of touch all your pretty little books that are there. And I know that, I'm so grateful, Zamil. Like the generosity to send me that. I'm just thank you so much. You're such a wonderful human, besides being a brilliant author. And again, I'm gonna treasure this man. This is I felt like I need to sleep with it. The first time I got it, I was like, oh my gosh. I think if I didn't think I would ruin it, I probably would. But yeah. So you're doing this novella, and it's gonna be somewhat of a prequel novella in a way, and you're going back, and there's one, and again, no spoilers here. There was one of your books whereby it was almost like time travel, where a character was brought forward into. That was one of my absolute favorite plot lines. Like I loved that plot line in your books. That was it. That was absolutely incredible. And and it was so well done in that this character, because what you think you're reading is that, okay, you're reading about this character in the past, and it's going to have something to do with the future, but you're not going to realize this character will actually be there to make that impact, and that was phenomenal. But in any case, so you got this prequel novella coming. Can you give us any hints about? Well, first of all, because people may or may not know, so you currently have 4 books out in the main Gunmetal Gods series, and you have the novella. What is the plan for the series? Do you have a plan in terms of how many books the series will be? Can you elaborate on that first, please?
That's always the question that I dread being asked, because every time I've been asked that question, I have said, okay, this next book is the last book. And that is still what I will say, is that in the main series, as you said, there are 4 books, and the 5th book is planned to be the last book. Now, when I sit down to write the 5th book, anything can happen, okay? And that is just because I, as a storyteller, I follow kind of the soul. I follow my instincts. All right, and if my instincts are telling me this can't be the last book, then it's not going to be the last. But the plan is that the fifth book in the main series will be the last book. And right now, I'm working on the second novella, which is called Death Hymns of Homara. And
Ooh.
this, uh, but this will not be the last novella. So I do have a third novella planned as well. Um, and that I will probably start writing once I finish the fifth book in the main series. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that even if the main series ends, I will still write. The lore is very large, and there
Yes.
are many different periods that we can explore, many parts of the world. So I can still write books in the series, and the world will still be alive, and I can still explore some of the ideas that I want to explore. Um, but as far as the main series goes, yeah, that is the plan. That the fifth book will be the last, but with an asterisk on that statement.
Okay, hey, listen, I'm not complaining. If you wrote another 20 books in the main series, I'm gonna be happy. I'm not complaining. I'm not trying to box you in here. All I know is that I'm very curious and excited to see at the end of the day. And again, if this was an ongoing series, that I would be stoked. But how you're going to wrap up the main story. Like, I'm very, very curious to see how you're gonna wrap that up. And I personally, I am so happy that you're gonna continue to write novellas in this universe, because again, as you said, the lore is so rich, it's so deep. That you, from a historical perspective, you go back hundreds or potentially thousands of years and give us all these amazing, incredible stories in this universe that I've grown to love. So I believe me, I'm happy if you keep writing, but I am curious to see how you're going to wrap up the series. I personally thought, and I had no insight, even though I obviously I've had the privilege of talking to you, I had no insight into how many books there are going to be. But when I initially started reading this, I thought this is going to be a 7-book series, right? Because that was kind of the number in my head that I saw, based on your willingness to dive deep into certain characters, and to not have certain characters featured in the next book. I thought this looks like a 7-ish book series. That was my very uneducated guess, right? But 5 is also a wonderful number. But no matter how many books you write, Zamil series, just know that it is absolutely spectacular, and certainly one of my favorite indie fantasy series. It's going to be of all time. I could easily put it on the list now. It's just that I made these arbitrary rules about, okay, no series that aren't completed yet. But trust me, that's not indicative of how much I absolutely love and adore Gunmetal Gods. And it's certainly, when you finish that series, whenever you decide to, it is going to be on my top indie science fiction fantasy series all time. Zero question about that. And in the upper echelon, so of that top 10 list. So I want to quickly put up the wonderful Christopher Neville. Hey, buddy. Happy Sunday, sir. Late. You're never late, man. Even if you watch the replay, never such as late. Christopher is back. We're all so grateful for that on BookTube. He's a wonderful, wonderful BookTuber. Does phenomenal content. Check out his channel. Actually, I'm unsure if Christopher has ever read Gunmetal Gods yet. If you haven't, Christopher, yeah, time to get moving, because this series is phenomenal. There's a reason why it's got thousands of amazing glowing reviews on Goodreads, thousands, and on Amazon, and that Zamil is frequently mentioned when we talk about the indie science fiction fantasy sphere. He's frequently mentioned as one of the top authors, and there's a reason for that. It's well justified. I certainly feel that way, and of course, again, I've had the privilege of watching Zamil's journey, with the series, and really feel humbled, to see him, reach that acclaim and all the praise, and again, well deserved. And it's just, like I said, it's just an honor to get to sit down and talk with one of my favorite authors, on this level. So it's a real treat for me, So thank you so much, for Zamil, for doing that. And you've been so generous for your time. I don't want to take advantage of it. I just want, as we're winding down, I would just like the opportunity, provide you with the opportunity, to tell us, on social media, where can people find you? If they want to talk to you about, I know how approachable you are and how willing you are to talk about your books and your writing. Where they can find you on social media, follow you, see what you're doing, see what's coming up next with, for example, the Conqueror's Blood Special Edition, the next books in the Gun Metal God series. Where can they interact with you there? Can you tell us where to get your books? For example, if you're only KU, Kindle Unlimited, etc., and those sort of wonderful details about you.
Yeah, my books are on Kindle Unlimited. You can get them on Amazon in paperback. You can also get them at other stores in paperback like Barnes and Nobles. And yeah, if you want to come interact with me, I'm happy to interact. Like, I'm on every social media: Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook. I'm on Reddit. I'm everywhere. So whenever you want to come and talk to me, just shout me out, and I'll be happy to chat, answer any question you have. Yeah, and if you want to check out my website, it's zamilaktar.com. You can see all my books on there, the Kickstarters. You can see all my socials on there. So that would be like the hub, zamilaktar.com, if you want to, find everything about me, basically.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Zamil. And in this video, you'll see all of Zamil's links are listed down there. I made sure I put them in there. So check him out. Again, a lot of people right now are buzzing this time of year about special editions. I mean, the Gun Metal God special edition, folks. If you're looking for a special edition that you want for your shelves that are going to pretty up your shelves, this is definitely one of them. This is absolutely stunning. And like I said, I look at this every time I go to my bookshelf. I look at this and I go, wow, it is just, again, it's just beautiful. And thank you so much, Zamil, for sending this to me. It means so much to me. Thank you. Quickly, folks, I'm P.L. Stewart. I'm the author of the Drowned Kingdom Saga. 4 books out currently in the series. The 5th one coming out in the spring of 2025. So within the next few months, A Pack of Wolves. So book 5 of a 7-book series. And you can find me most often beside my awesome colleague made between the pages who was in the chat. Thanks so much, Taylor, for coming out and supporting and coming to see Zamil, who, we're all friends. So that is wonderful to see you. So check out Taylor's content. Again, usually you can see me beside Taylor on Page Chewing, another interview feature where we interview fantastic creators from over the community. So check out Taylor's content channel and check out Page Chewing with Taylor and I. Of course, you can find me here on the Drowned Kingdom Saga P.L. Stewart, my channel, where I do things such as 6 Elemental interviews, where I get to sit down with fantastic people such as Zamil. I also do reviews and deep dives, things like that, into series. Also, Before I Go blog, where myself and Taylor are assistant editors. Shout out to the wonderful Beth Tabler, our amazing leader, and all of our peeps at Before We Go blog, which is a phenomenal blog site. You can also see my reviews on Goodreads. In terms of the books, plstewart.com. Social media, like Zamil, I'm all over. Blue Sky, Facebook, Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it. Instagram. Typically, the handle is at plstewartwrites. So I want to say thank you so much for everyone who came by in the chat. Of course, headlined by my wonderful colleague, Taylor, including the great Charlie Cavendish for stopping by. Thank you so much, Charlie, and the awesome Christopher Novel, another wonderful booktuber. Check out his channel. Thank you so much for coming by, everybody who stopped by in the live. Everybody who's going to watch this on the replay, you are what makes this type of long-form content amazing. And I don't want to see it disappear from BookTube. So I know for myself, I'm going to keep doing it because these conversations just bring me so much joy. And hopefully you get to meet another new potential favorite author, for those of you who aren't familiar with Zamil's work, in Zamil AKHTAR. And yes, of course, Taylor, my pleasure. So once again, thank you so much to my guest, the amazing Zamil AKHTAR, for coming by. Folks, if you've been circling about Gun Metal Gods and wondering, it's time to dive in, man. This series is fantastic. It is just so dark, so compelling, so beautiful. One of those series, again, the darkness side by side with the light. I think that combination is just fantastic. So thanks for stopping by, and thank you again, Zamil. And we'll see you next time.